want to take you guys into a little journey today in the Bible. I'm going to start out in the book of Matthew, and then I'll end up somewhere else. But first, the title of my message is this: check your smell before you wreck your smell. I don't know, chickadee, check your smell. It's never been in a song. I think I made this up by myself. I'm not even mimicking anything. I know the people in the first service, some said that it might have been in a song, but I don't believe them. I have the microphone. But I want to take you through the book of Matthew. The book of Matthew was written in 85 AD, so it was probably when my dad was 2. And he wrote this because he had a first-person account of the life and time of Jesus. It's the first book in the Old Testament that goes and talks about the life that Jesus spent here on earth. It's part of the Synoptic Gospels, which is a fancy way of saying they all go together, or Vantage Point. Does that make sense? You guys seen the movie Vantage Point? It was pretty cool how it kind of goes through every scenario. And so this is what the book of Matthew does, along with Luke and Mark. He goes and he sits and he listens to Jesus and he writes down all of Jesus' words. And one specific teaching was a Sermon on the Mount. And this is a sermon that Jesus himself is sitting and preaching, and he's teaching and talking. And there's people listening to him, and he's telling them what we're supposed to be like, what we're supposed to do, how we're supposed to live. And he makes comparisons so that we can understand it, okay? Here's one of the comparisons that he does. He says, "You are the salt of the earth, but what good is salt if it has lost its flavor? Can you make it salty again? It will lose." I'm sorry, I've said this again, and I'll continue to say it. If you continue to read that, you're awesome. I'm dyslexic, so I got stuck. So here we go. I was somewhere around here. It will. See, you said that. It still didn't help me. It will be thrown underfoot. No, thrown out and trampled underfoot as worthless. You are the light of the world, like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on a stand so that it can give light to everyone. I know I'm kind of doing my thing. Can give light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your good deeds shine out for all to see. And wait, I put that in there. That's in there. For all to see, so that everyone will praise your heavenly Father. And that's in the book of Matthew. It's right here. You see it? It's in the book of Matthew 5:13 through 16. Okay, so if you want to see that, that's there. So Jesus kind of draws comparisons for us. Okay, we're salt, we're light. And he does this in ways that we might be able to understand, because if he would have just to walk around and say, hey, be like me, it's kind of a little bit harder. So we ask this, bless you, we ask this question, what does that mean? And again, like I said, it's Jesus giving us examples of things that we can understand. He kind of does that throughout the Bible, because if he didn't give us examples of things we understand, then we're open to interpretation of whatever we want, and then we have we have stuff, okay? So he tells us that we are salt. And salt back in those days was specifically used for preservation. Say that with me. Say preservation. And it also killed bacteria. And if he's telling us we're supposed to be salt, that's pretty cool. I don't know. He also tells us we're supposed to be light, right? Light dispels darkness and it reveals things. Ooh, scary. I don't like light because it's scary. Well, actually, when my house is dirty, I leave all the lights off. And Dina's like, why is it so dark in here? I'm like, no, mind your business, Dina. Don't worry about it. But light kind of helps us to see the things that are hidden. And oftentimes we don't like to see what's hidden. But I'm going to help us check our smell, keep our smell in check, in 4 simple steps. How many like 4 simple steps? Because 5 is too much and 3 is not enough, correct? All right, so here we go. Our first step to keeping our smell in check is we got to check our salt levels. It says you're the salt of the earth, but what good is the salt if it has lost its flavor? Can it be made salty again? Now here's the crazy thing. Everything that the Bible says, the world says it as well, but it kind of twists it. So if I were to tell you, hey, you're supposed to be salty, what does that mean nowadays? Nowadays it means I'm bitter. I'm kind of like, ew, what's wrong with you? That guy's salty. I ain't trying to be like him. But the Bible tells us that we're supposed to preserve, and we're supposed to bring flavor, and we're supposed to do the things that salt's really made for. And the same thing with kind of light. Someone said, hey, I'm getting lit. It means something different. It's not being a light and putting a lamp on that type of thing that the Bible talks about. It's a little something different. And it says in here that if you light a lamp, you don't put a bowl on top of it. But I know that when you get lit, you'll put a bunch of things on your head. Anyways, so here's the thing. I want to ask this question right here. What else does the Bible say? Because every time we read the Bible, there's always something else that you can point to. There's a lot of people that read one verse in the Bible or they read one little thing and then they live their life based on it, but they forget completely what else the rest of the Bible said. So I wanted to do this. I wanted to ask this question. Hold on one second. Let's go right back to the last one, just because I want to leave them in suspense. So here's how we actually check our salt level. Okay, I'm going to give you an example of that. I had this friend, and I hung around this guy. And when I first met him, he had this kind of weird, funny laugh, and I didn't want to do his laugh for the first service, but I'm going to do it for the second service because I'll tell him I didn't do it in the first service, right? So he had this laugh, and it went like this, right? And at the end of his laugh, he said the words "this fool." So it went together like this, this fool. And he said that for everything, and it was like I'm going to Walmart, this fool, like. Okay, well, sure. So when I first met this dude and I first started hanging out with him, it was the weirdest thing ever. And I'm like, why are you? And I pointed it out to him and he still did it. And I'm like, okay, you're determined. I get you. So here's the thing about, 3-4 months or so hanging around with this guy, I found myself doing it. It was the craziest thing ever. It was like, hey, this one. And my laugh kind of got geekier too. And I'm like, wait, what happened? Right? And then it just became my normal thing to do. Right? So I don't know if any of you guys can relate to anything like this, where you're hanging out with someone and the things that they're doing are kind of like, oh, it's kind of sus. I don't know if I want to do that. You shouldn't do that. But after hanging out with them for a while, that becomes your new normal. Right? So then you start thinking about this. If I'm supposed to be salt, am I being the salt that's losing its flavor? Can I become salty again? Are they putting darkness into where the light is supposed to be? Am I supposed to be? Is that what's going on in this whole relationship? Or is it the other way around? Are you bringing salt somewhere? Are you kind of doing your thing? You see that? See that? It took a while. First service got it right away. You guys, it's okay. Don't worry about it. So here's the thing. Now, the next book I want to go to, because we are asking the question, what does the Bible say? Now, we're going to point back to 30 years prior from the book of Matthew, and we're going to go into 55 AD. Follow me, so my dad wasn't born yet, okay? Here we go, and we start talking about the book of Corinthians. This was written by Paul. It was 2 letters in the form of 2 letters to the Corinthian church with people like us trying to do their best to be the best Christian in the world, but they were missing a few little things. So Paul writes them something, and he writes this. Let's look at this. Perfect. He says, our lives are like a Christ-like fragrance raising up to God. But the fragrance is perceived differently by those who are being saved and by those who are perishing. To those who are perishing, we are a dreadful smell of death and doom. But to those who are being saved, we are a life-giving perfume. And who is adequate for such a task as this? Now check this out. The first part hi Justin. The first part of Matthew, that I pointed to, he's telling us to be salt and he's telling us to be light. That's 2 of our senses, correct? How many senses do we have? Unless you're an M. Night Shyamalan dude and you like the movie, and you have 6 of them. And if you do, come and see me after church because I want to hang out with you and take you to some people's houses because I'm pretty sure some people got some things living. I'm just joking. Anyways, so let's look at our 5 senses, okay? There we go. Perfect. We got sight. This is what you see. We have taste. We have our hearing. What'd you say? We have our touch and our smell, right? These are all things that we have that have been gifted to us from God. They are amazing, right? Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. See this right here? Ugh. I'm not going to drop it. Even if I did, there's nothing in it. No surprise. You see that? So when my wife was pregnant, we lived in the suburbs of Mac Road by La Mancha. And she would always get these cravings. And I knew better because she was mean. She was mean, guys. And if I didn't get the specific cinnamon roll that she wanted, I would not be here today. I would probably be dead. I promise you. She's Salvadorian. Them girl cray. So she always wanted this specific cinnamon roll. And if you live in Sacramento, although I was corrected in the first service and someone brought me a cinnamon roll, so second service, you guys got something to live up to. You know that this is the best place to get a cinnamon roll, right? Am I tripping? Maybe not. I don't know. If you think otherwise, then prove it. So I remember walking into the mall because that's how close it was to us from Mac Road. And I would walk in, and as soon as I walked in, I remembered the smell, and I'm like, I'm glad she sent me. And I was so happy, and I remember I would get that cinnamon roll, and I would eat one on the way home before she even knew it, because I gained all the pounds with her and then some. I ballooned to too much pounds and a half. And I remember my favorite part of this, was the little creamy, gushy, the little center of it. And it made the song Jesus at the Center make so much more sense. Because if Jesus was the center of that cinnamon roll, and if that's how it was, I promise you would never miss church on a Sunday. Because that's the best. But anyways, that's what I think about every time I walk into the mall and I smell cinnamon rolls. I don't eat them anymore, but I will take on a challenge if you tell me that that's not believe me, I'm up for challenges. But that's the memory that it kind of brings to me. So here's the thing. I want to talk to you guys about why that's the case. Now, there's this little thing in our brain. It looks like this. That's my actual brain. I went to the doctor and said, I'm preaching today. Can you help me out? So he's like, yeah, sure. I'll take a picture of your brain. And I said, highlight the thalamus for me. Everyone say thalamus. Thalamus. You said it wrong. Or one of us did. Someone did. Anyways, so the thalamus, this little guy right here, is responsible for receiving everything that our senses receive, right? And then it tells you what to do. So if it says, oh, that's too bright, it sends out a signal that says, blink. Or cover your eyes. If you put something in your mouth and it's disgusting, it says, no, spit that out, or something, whatever your mouth tells you to do. If you touch fire, when you pull that out, get out. Your thalamus is responsible for doing all that stuff, right? For only 4 of your senses. Guess which one is not doing that for? You're right, your smell. Because the smell does this. It goes straight to this little thing right here called the olfactory bulb. Also my brain. They shaved my beard for this drawing. But anyways, don't worry about it. This little things right here, they're attached directly to your nose holes. And your smell goes in there. And then you see it's attached to something else. And the very first thing that it's directly attached to is this little almond-shaped thing in your brain called the amygdala. Everyone say amygdala. Amygdala. We're doing brain surgery today. Rocket surgery, brain science, all that stuff. The amygdala, this little guy right here, is responsible for your emotions. That guy, I don't know about you, but some of us need to get the amygdala under control. Hey, if you're married, you can look at your wife and say, "Hey, babe, how's your amygdala?" No, I'm just joking. The next thing it's directly attached to is your hippocampus, right? This thing is responsible for our memories. Isn't that so crazy? So what I'm saying is, as soon as you smell something, a memory and an emotion go like this, and they marry each other, and then you have that forever. It's kind of cool, and it's kind of not cool at the same time, because how many of you guys know a bad smell? I know sometimes I smell a certain cologne or a perfume, and I didn't even meet the person, and I already hate them. It's crazy. I don't know you, but I don't like you right now because you stink. I don't know why, but it sucks that there's I can't say that. Just edit. There, we just took it off. There's bad smells, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, but there is, just because people are not human sometimes. I don't know what happens to them. We're trying our best here, so it's not us, so don't worry about it affecting you when we're talking about this. But the next part of what I'm talking about, step number 2, if you would say step number 2, is we need to let what needs to die, die. It says, to those who are perishing, we are a dreadful smell of death and doom. But why? If we're a Christ-like fragrance, how can we smell like death and doom? Well, it says to those that are perishing, right? So, there's a couple conclusions that I came to. And I'll share them with you. If you have any more, share them with me. It'll be fun. We'll be sharing. So the first one is, maybe you're the awesomest Christian in the world, and if you are, hang around with me because I need to know what that looks like. And you're hanging around these people, and these people are like, see things in you, and they're like, oh, and you kind of remind you, like, you're just walking with this person's like praying and speaking in tongues as you're just walking, like, hey, fool, we're just walking. And then in you, it's like, maybe I should be praying too. Maybe I should be doing that too. Or maybe you're just such a good Christian that when you're around someone, people are just reminded of things that are inside them, that they've allowed to live, that they need to take and put on a cross and allow them to die. If that's you, that's great. Or maybe you're the other person, and you've experienced the other person, and this is the person that says, I'm a Jesus follower, and they only read one verse, and then they want to preach that whole verse to everyone, and in the process of doing so, they kill their smell. And it gets people to a place where, like, I don't not only like your smell, I don't like the smell of Jesus. And every time they're around you, every time they smell you, the hope of them finding Jesus dies a little more. Those are two things that I've came across on here and thinking, well, how can we smell like doom and death? And I want to say, just on behalf of every Christian that's legitimately trying, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if someone's taken advantage in that place and said, hey, I'm a Jesus follower, and then they did or said something wrong or just kind of put you in this place where, like, yeah, I don't want to smell anything Jesus. I'm sorry. Because just human beings, let's take Jesus out of the scenario. I'm sorry that you were treated like that as a human. Like, we shouldn't do that, let alone if we're professing Jesus. So on behalf of that person, I'm sorry. I legitimately am sorry, and I don't like that people have to deal with that because it's not fun. Because here's what happens is, instead of actually taking in Jesus, people are just using him as like a little spray. Jesus Febreze us. They're using something like that. So here's the thing. I've had the opportunity of working in places where I get to walk into people's homes, and some people's homes are like, you walk in and you're like, whoa, 3 stories. You know what I'm talking about back there, 3 stories. And I have to put an AC where? Oh my gosh. And then there's other houses you walk in and you're like, oh my God, what are you doing? This house is gross. But you kind of witness things, and people's houses smell different ways. And it's because sometimes it's what they eat. I lived across the street from someone, and the smell of what they were eating was permeating through their windows, and you would stand in the driveway and you can smell it. They cooked with a lot of curry, and I knew it. I'm not a fan of curry, Steph Curry either. I just don't do it. But it did. It kind of, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? You can kind of smell when people eat specific things. And that's what we're supposed to do with Jesus. Well, how does that look like? Well, I take him in. I know when my smell is kind of going away from my Jesus smell, because I start responding and smelling like me. It's crazy. But people sometimes, they take their Jesus and they're like, check this out. I'm going to spray on Jesus this morning because I'm going to church. I got my Jesus on. Or I'm getting ready to go to school, getting ready to go to work, or wherever it is that we're going. And we spray on our Jesus. We look at our YouVersion Bible app and it says, look, I got a streak going, 7 days. That's 7 days of me smelling like Jesus. I read the last verse, boom, put it away. And we don't actually eat the word. We just spray it on, but don't even realize or care that by lunchtime, our smell's gone, right? And how do we know our smell's gone? Because a coworker or a friend or someone says something or does something, and either it gets to us to the point where we're like, like you, or we participate in it. And we don't even care what we smell like by the time we get home. So it leads me to my next question, and that's a tough one, believe me. And if you feel like I'm stepping on your toes, because I'm writing this for myself, because I needed to keep myself accountable. But that question is, what does your house smell like? It stinks. If you're being honest, or if you're being cool, it smells great, right? I'm going to be honest, it smells great right now. The fact of the matter is, we need to continue to renew our smell. What's crazy is that we walk out the house and we put on our Jesus spray because Jesus might use me today and I want to smell like him. We go through the day and we get home, and the people that matter most don't smell them on us by the time we get home. We get home and things of the world, things that have happened to us, the traffic smell. And we get home and that's what we smell like with our children, with our spouses. Ouch. So step number 3 says this. Check your responses and your tones. It says a gentle answer deflects anger, but harsh words make tempers flare. Let's not be the tempers flare person. That's how we make sure that we don't stink when we get home. That's how we make sure that we don't stink when we're at home. Right? Because, again, the most important people are going to smell us at the end of the day. And if we don't smell like Jesus still, everything that we said to get them here on Sunday morning, it doesn't matter anymore. How do we do this? You might say, Steve, it's a hard thing to do. I'm a single mom. I'm a single dad. My spouse. You don't know them. They want Cinnabons all the time, and I live in the suburbs. How do I do that? The answer is, you just keep checking on it. Just keep yourself in check. That's what we're supposed to do. I know there's some people that sometimes you get home and it's difficult. I do, believe me. I walked last Sunday. Okay, even with your next door neighbors. I have a next door neighbor who's I've lived there for almost 10 years, and everything was great. When she needed help moving things into her house, guess what? Who helped her? Right? And then one summer she comes banging on my door like she was the police, and she says, blah, 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 and cussing and this and that, and I'm like standing there like, who is you? But then I remember, yeah, yeah. And I was super kind and super calm, and Dina's like, you should have said this. And I'm like, I know, and you should have done that. And I'm like, I wish. But I didn't do it. And then, and even so my cat was mauled by a dog, and she comes up to my wife, screaming at my wife, telling her, that's all your fault, because of, what kind of human are you? Like, who does that? Like, in a moment of, so all that to say, last Sunday, I got home from church. I was happy. In the morning, I seen her washing her car, and she seen me putting my guitar in the back of the car, and I'm wearing my red Streamline shirt with a Striven video. And we get in, and we leave. I come back from church, and there's a note on my mailbox, and it has a little Nerf bullet taped to it. And I'm like, what is that? And I go and read it, and it says, I hope you're not shooting my dog again. I'm like, shooting your dog again? What do you mean again? I didn't do it the first time. And so I'm like, my Nerf bullets are red. This one's blue. Like, you would no. So I got upset. So I went and I knocked on the door, and I'm ready. And I'm so glad that she didn't answer, because I knew I was going to give her a piece of my mind, not a piece of God's. So here's what happened: is I go inside, and I'm marching inside, and I'm thinking of all the bad words I can say, because I know them all. I know every single word. I promise you. I grew up in Oak Park. I went to the School of Hard Knocks. I got a degree in thugonomics. I graduated, save me good Lode. At the top of my class, I know everything I was supposed to tell her and gonna tell her. But then the voice inside me said, hey, she saw you go to church today, and what if you're the only Jesus she smells? And I'm like, I don't want to smell like you, Jesus. So I wrote her a note, and I said, in the most passive-aggressive way possible, I said, hey, this is not my Nerf bullet. Please know I love animals more than I love people. And I gave her the note. But it's not exactly what I wanted to say, but it was something nicer. It was way nicer, and I hope she interpreted it the way I didn't mean it versus the way I meant it. But anyways, I tried my darndest, and I tried my hardest to be and smell like Jesus to my next door neighbor, so that if she ever comes around, she'll never have an opportunity to say, but you said that you're supposed to be Jesus and blah, 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 and you treated me in this manner. I don't want that. I don't want that. And you might sit around and say, but it's tough. And I've heard all the excuses. I read my Bible, and I fall asleep like after 2 sentences. And come on, old person. But It is. It's a difficult task. It is. It's boring sometimes, and I've heard all those excuses. But here's the thing: for me, at least, taking showers are boring, and eventually you're gonna have to take one. If not, you're gonna start to stink. I mean, I'm just sorry if that bugs you, but we might have missed something at the end of the verse. It says this: "Who is adequate for such a task as this?" Well, Pastor Dave he's adequate. He's the pastor of the church. Or maybe you might even say me because I'm up here. But I hate to break it to you guys. The answer to this question is we are. King David took on impossible tasks, right? He stood in front of a giant. He did a whole bunch of things that were deemed impossible, but he conquered them. And the only difference between you, me, and King David is that we're still alive. That's the truth. We're capable of this. We're 100% capable of this. I know this because in this 1 Corinthians, which is the same letter, but it's part 2, but this was part 1. That was confusing. Read it yourself. Paul says this in 1 Corinthians. "And now you have every spiritual gift you need as you eagerly wait for the return of our Lord Jesus Christ." That says, you see that has every gift you need. And you might stand back and say, well, maybe that's a gift for you, Steve. Maybe that's a gift for you to deal with your difficult neighbor or to go home and check your tone and check your response. Maybe that's a gift that God's given you. Truth of the matter is we all have gifts. God's given us all gifts, and I operate in my gift. But there's a difference between fruit and your gift. Your gifts are given, but your fruit is grown. So it takes some time for us to develop these things, but the only way we're going to develop these things is if we're living this way. Trying to develop our scent, trying to perfect, and I say perfect trying because we're not going to get there, but we try it on a daily basis. We try not to just spray on the Febrezes, but we try to ingest it so we actually smell like Him. When we walk around, what's permeating off of you? Is it bitterness? Is it hate? Is it defeat? Or is it hope? Because it says we're a life-giving fragrance. What is life? It's the opportunity to believe that we have another day, to make things right, to do things better. Are we giving off that hope? And here's step number 4. Is remember I'm lacking nothing. Again, you have everything you need as you eagerly wait for the return of Christ. Everything.